Lorraine pointed toward the front gate with a trembling finger. "Don't ever come back," she screamed. Her voice echoed across the quiet neighborhood. Ethel stood on the front lawn with 2 suitcases at her feet, her shoulders straight despite the humiliation burning across her face. Curtains shifted in nearby windows as neighbors peeked outside. They weren't pretending not to watch anymore. Marcus folded his arms and laughed. 6 years in law school, he said loudly. Thrown away because you suddenly decided you don't feel like finishing. I've never seen anyone destroy their own future this fast. Denise held up her phone, recording every second. "This is exactly what happens when people think they know better than Mom," she muttered. Lorraine stepped closer, until she was only inches from Ethel. "I fed you, I sacrificed for you. I told everyone my daughter would become a lawyer, and now you've embarrassed this family." Her eyes hardened. "You'll be begging to come back within a week." Ethel slowly removed the house key from her keychain and placed it into her mother's hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for me," she said quietly. Lorraine stared at her, almost disappointed that she wasn't crying. "Go," she snapped. Ethel picked up her suitcases, turned around, and walked toward her aging sedan without looking back once. The moment she closed the driver's door, the shouting disappeared behind the glass. Silence filled the car. She inhaled deeply, reached into her purse, and unlocked her phone. A single notification waited at the top of the screen. Funds have officially cleared. For the first time that day, the corner of her mouth lifted into a small smile. No one standing behind that front door had any idea what those 4 words actually meant. The next morning, Ethel wasn't driving through neighborhoods searching for apartments the way her family expected. Instead, she followed a winding coastal road until the ocean stretched endlessly beside her. Waves rolled against the cliffs as massive iron gates slowly opened. A representative from a luxury relocation company greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Ms. Ethel. Welcome home." Several moving trucks were already parked inside the property. The estate overlooked the ocean from nearly every room. Floor to ceiling, windows reflected the morning sunlight across polished stone floors. Palm trees swayed beside an infinity pool that seemed to disappear into the sea. Another staff member handed her a leather folder. "Here are your property documents, security access cards, and house keys." Ethel accepted them without hesitation. Everything had been prepared weeks earlier. She watched the movers carefully unload her belongings. Most of the boxes contained simple clothes, books, and office equipment. Years of living under someone else's expectations had taught her not to collect expensive things. One box carried nothing but framed family photographs. She paused before picking it up herself. The movers assumed she wanted those memories displayed immediately. They didn't know she wasn't so sure anymore. Standing on the balcony overlooking the ocean, Ethel pulled out her phone again. The same confidential notification remained there. The transfer was complete. The agreement had officially closed. Everything she had worked for over the last several years now belonged to her. Yet no one in her family knew any of it. As far as Lorraine, Marcus, and Denise were concerned, Ethel was unemployed, homeless, and destined to regret leaving law school. They believed they had just watched her ruin her life. What they couldn't possibly imagine was that, while they were throwing her out of the house, she had already become worth $38 million. And by this time tomorrow, the entire world would know why. The house was almost silent, except for the distant crash of waves below the cliffs. Ethel walked slowly from room to room, her footsteps echoing across polished hardwood floors that seemed impossibly large for one person. A mover carried another box. "Where would you like these family photos, Ms. Ethel?" She glanced at the box before answering. "Just leave them there." After the mover left, she opened it herself. Smiling faces stared back at her from birthdays, graduations, and holidays. She picked up one picture of herself at 12 years old, standing between Lorraine and Marcus. For a long moment, she simply looked at it. Then she slipped it into a drawer and closed it. The rest of the box stayed unopened. Her phone buzzed. It was her college friend, Maya. "I saw your withdrawal from law school," Maya said gently. "I figured your family didn't take it well." Ethel gave a quiet laugh. "They threw me out." "What, Ethel?" "They believe I destroyed my future." Maya sighed. "I told you years ago you didn't belong there." Ethel leaned against the balcony railing, watching the ocean. "I stayed because leaving would have broken my mother's heart. And staying almost broke yours." The words hung between them. Years earlier, Ethel had tried to tell her family about an idea she had for a cybersecurity platform. Marcus hadn't even looked up from the television. "So, you want to play with computers instead of becoming a lawyer?" Denise laughed. "That sounds like another one of those startup fantasies." Lorraine ended the conversation with a wave of her hand. "Real careers come with licenses. Finish law school first, then you can waste your time on hobbies." After that night, Ethel never mentioned the company again. Instead, she worked in silence. Every evening after classes, she joined two trusted partners over encrypted video calls. Weekends disappeared into coding sessions, investor meetings, and product testing. Her grades stayed high enough to keep Lorraine satisfied, while her company quietly grew beyond anything her family could imagine. Several times, her partners urged her to leave school altogether. "You don't have to keep pretending," one of them insisted. Ethel always shook her head. "I'm not ready to lose my family." Months later, when acquisition negotiations began, strict confidentiality agreements arrived. From that moment forward, she legally couldn't explain the late-night calls, unexpected meetings, or sudden calm. To Lorraine, her silence looked like laziness. To Marcus, it looked like failure. To Denise, it looked like surrender. None of them realized she was carrying the biggest secret of her life. Her phone rang again. The caller ID displayed one of her business partners. Ethel answered immediately. A familiar voice said only one sentence. "The announcement goes public tomorrow morning." Marcus was halfway through his morning coffee when a coworker walked into the break room holding a phone. "Dude, isn't this your sister?" Marcus barely looked up. "My sister, unless she finally found a job." His coworker turned the screen toward him. A business news anchor stood in front of the logo of a rapidly growing cybersecurity company. Today marks the completion of one of the largest technology acquisitions of the year. Co-founder Ethel Harrison, whose ownership stake exceeds $38 million, officially joins the ranks of the country's newest self-made entrepreneurs. Marcus frowned. "That's impossible." The anchor continued as photographs of Ethel appeared on the screen. She stood confidently in front of a breathtaking oceanfront estate during an interview, dressed in a tailored navy suit. There was no mistake. It was her. His coffee slipped from his hand and splashed across the floor. Across town, Denise was scrolling through social media when Ethel's name suddenly appeared everywhere. Business leaders congratulated her. Former professors praised her perseverance. Old classmates celebrated her success. One interview clip caught Denise's attention. The camera followed Ethel through the entrance of the oceanfront estate. A reporter smiled. "So this is your new home after the acquisition?" "It is," Ethel replied calmly. "I've been looking forward to finally moving in." Denise stared at the screen in disbelief. "Mom." Lorraine hurried into the room. "What is it now?" Denise held out the phone with shaking hands. "Look." Lorraine watched for several seconds before scoffing. "Someone else has the same name." Denise zoomed in on Ethel's face. "No, Mom, it's her." Lorraine's expression hardened. "That's fake, it has to be." Before either of them could say another word, the front doorbell rang. Their next-door neighbor stood outside smiling. "Lorraine, congratulations. We just saw your daughter on television. You must be so proud. Lorraine forced a stiff smile. Yes, of course. But more neighbors began gathering on the sidewalk. Questions came from every direction. When did she start that company? Why didn't you tell us? What an incredible success story. Lorraine struggled to answer. Then another neighbor quietly spoke. I thought, wasn't she the daughter you threw out yesterday? The group fell silent. Within minutes, Denise's video from the previous afternoon appeared online. There was Lorraine shouting, Marcus laughing, Denise recording, and Ethel walking away without saying a cruel word. The comments spread faster than the interview itself. Public sympathy shifted instantly toward Ethel. By noon, Lorraine realized the family's reputation had become the real headline. Without saying a word, she grabbed her car keys, rushed out the front door, and drove toward the address everyone on television now recognized. Lorraine pulled her car to a stop outside the towering iron gates of the Oceanfront estate. She stepped out before the engine had fully shut off and marched toward the entrance. I need to see my daughter, she demanded. The security officer offered a polite smile. Good afternoon, ma'am. May I have your name? I'm her mother. He checked a tablet. I'm sorry. Ms. Harrison has instructed us not to admit unannounced visitors. Lorraine's face tightened. Tell her Lorraine is here. I already have. She waited, convinced the gates would open. They didn't. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Denise arrived in separate cars. Marcus looked around the estate in disbelief. This place is unbelievable. Denise lowered her voice. Maybe we judged her too quickly. Lorraine shot her a look. This is just a misunderstanding. Once she explains everything, we'll go back to being a family. The security officer returned. Ms. Harrison appreciates that you've come. She's deciding whether she'll meet with you. Marcus frowned. She's deciding. The realization hit all three of them at once. For the first time in their lives, Ethel controlled the conversation. Inside the estate, Ethel sat in her home office overlooking the ocean. Her attorney placed a folder on the desk. We have another issue. Ethel opened it. Several emails had already arrived. One relative claimed to be representing her interests. Another asked the acquiring company for consulting work because he was family. A distant cousin had even suggested investors contact him directly. Ethel sighed. It started faster than I expected. Her attorney nodded. I recommend we formally notify the company that no one has authority to speak on your behalf. Do it. He slid another document across the desk. Also, your mother has left 11 voicemail messages. Ethel listened to the latest one. Ethel, families argue. We all say things we don't mean. Please call me. We can fix this. She set the phone down without responding. This isn't about one argument, she said quietly. It's about years of believing I only mattered if I lived the life they chose for me. After a long silence, she looked at her attorney. I'll meet them. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes. But not here. The following afternoon, they met in a private conference room at a downtown law office. A mediator and Ethel's attorney sat quietly nearby. Lorraine rushed forward. Ethel, sweetheart, we made mistakes. Let's put all this behind us. Marcus nodded eagerly. We were just worried about you. Denise wiped away tears. I shouldn't have recorded that video. Ethel listened without interrupting. Then she calmly opened her briefcase. She removed a neatly organized document and placed it in the center of the table. Everyone fell silent. She folded her hands. Before we continue, she said evenly, you need to read this. The room fell completely silent. Lorraine reached for the document first. Across the top was a simple title, Timeline of Harrison's Cyber Defense Technologies. She frowned as she flipped through the pages. Every milestone was dated. Company incorporation. First prototype. Seed funding. Government pilot contracts. Private investment rounds. Major client acquisitions. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, his confidence fatting with every page. "These dates," he whispered. Denise scanned another section. "She started this while she was still in law school." Ethel nodded. "I did." Her attorney slid a second document across the table. "This is the confidentiality agreement signed by all founders during the acquisition process." Lorraine looked confused. Ethel spoke calmly. "For the last 11 months, I was legally prohibited from discussing the sale with anyone. If I had revealed it, the acquisition could have collapsed, and every founder could have faced serious legal consequences." Marcus stared at her. "So, when you left law school—" "The acquisition had already closed," Ethel answered. "I wasn't walking away from my future." She met her mother's eyes. "I was walking toward it." No one spoke. Lorraine's shoulders slowly slumped. "I thought," she began before her voice broke, "I thought you were throwing your life away." Ethel gave a small, sad smile. "You never asked why." Marcus lowered his head. "I called you a failure." "You did." "I laughed at you." "You did." Denise wiped tears from her face. "I posted that video because I wanted everyone to see you being wrong." Ethel looked at her gently. "And now the world has seen something very different." The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. Ethel folded her hands. Being asked to leave wasn't the hardest part. Lorraine looked up hopefully. "It wasn't." "No." Ethel's voice remained steady. "The hardest part was realizing that everything I'd done for this family, helping with bills, taking care of grandma, postponing my own dreams, meant nothing the moment I made one decision you didn't approve of." No one had an answer. For years, Lorraine had believed love and control were the same thing. Now she understood they were not. Over the following weeks, the consequences spread far beyond that conference room. The neighborhood continued talking about the family that publicly rejected their own daughter, just one day before her success became national news. Marcus quietly withdrew from several business networking groups after people questioned why he had mocked the very sister he now claimed to admire. When acquaintances asked Lorraine about Ethel, the conversations no longer centered on pride. Instead, they ended with uncomfortable questions about the day she had ordered her daughter never to return. Ethel's legal team formally notified the acquiring company that no relative had permission to represent her or use her name in any business discussions. The request stopped almost immediately. Months later, Ethel announced the launch of a charitable foundation dedicated to helping students who felt trapped in careers chosen for them by others. At the opening ceremony, she spoke only briefly. "Success isn't becoming the person someone else imagined. It's having the courage to become the person you were meant to be." The audience rose in applause. From the balcony of her oceanfront estate, Ethel watched another sunrise paint the horizon gold. For the first time in years, there were no expectations waiting for her. No permission to seek. No approval to earn. Only peace. She quietly closed the balcony doors, turned toward the home she had built for herself, and walked inside. The day her mother told her never to come